All right. So as we've been going through shows 1, 2, and 3, we've kind of had the schedule of show 1 was assess, show 2 was plan, and show 3 is to execute. So that's what we're talking about today is execution. Do a quick sign check here. Looks like we're running pretty good on time. We've got ahead of steam, but we'll keep it balanced. What we're going to talk about next is in this show is the operations, what we're doing during the operation, during the event. We'll talk about the days before, ODAR 30, pre-ops briefing, final pre-ops, operations, standard and special, and we'll finish up with post-ops. And at each one of these steps, we'll stop and have some chance for the audience as long as we're staying on time. Right now, the time looks good. So just another note that put your questions in chat as you've been doing already, and we're going to try to get as much input as we can from you, and we really appreciate it. So, Jim, the days before, ODAR, the days before we do, what do we have to do?
Well, one of the first things is we need to definitely anticipate what our neighbors and who the neighbors are in adjacent to as well as the surrounding areas to our operations. You're going to run into all sorts, all kinds, at all times in doing these operations, and sometimes we get some surprises, but if we've done our homework and been diligent at keeping up with our neighbors and making contact with them, that we'll be able to cover some of the questions and issues that they have with the operations.
So one of the things that we often need to tell neighbors about is that the sound from the helicopter, especially when they turn and you can hear it a lot farther away than you would think. So we have a video here that we're going to run, and Jim and I will be quiet, that shows the helicopter noise.
Boy, that distinctive sound, once you've been around it, you're never going to mistake that sound, and your neighbors are never going to mistake that sound when they've been around aerial operations.
So it can be kind of scary if they don't know. Another situation where you need to advise the neighbors is that the helicopter may be flying over a farm or something and not spraying, as it is in this case. We see the farm below, and you see the boom, and the boom is shut off. But the neighbors see the helicopter flying over their property. They hear the helicopter, and they're going to assume that the boom was on, unless you contacted them in advance and made that very clear to them.
All right, did we get Mark back?
How do I sound? Am I okay, guys?
Great.
You sound as normal as you can be, Mark.
Thanks, Jim.
So we're at the point of sensitive resource plans that we're doing in the days before. Mark, what do you do about sensitive resource plans?
Jim, we try to, and Mike, we try to understand.
Still got some echo there.
Still having issues. Okay.
Yep.
In our work with our resource plans through the ODF notifications, you'll get your list of sensitive resources, whether it be water or wildlife habitat, nesting areas, those things. We make sure that we have a list of those for every unit so that we can be prepared in advance as to what we're going to do, where the operation is going to occur, and especially the timing around these resources. The other thing that is critical at times is to invite, and especially where we have real sensitive neighbors, it has really paid off in the past to invite stewardship foresters onto the site for observation, and it has definitely been an excellent relationship with ODF, and when they're there and able to visit with the neighbors at the time of the application, it's really helped us a lot in getting through these operations around sensitive neighbors.
How about debris? Is that important, Jim?
Oh man, I'll tell you, the stuff that gets left on landings, we're usually around a logging landing. A lot of times the units have been planted prior, so maybe there'd be planting bags, or in this case, somebody's flying species of plastic bag, these things can really get air in them. And, oh, hey, look, here we have a different species of flying bag, a blue plastic flying bag. And these can get sucked into the rotor, tail rotor, and create damage. That's not a good thing. You want to make sure you police those areas prior to the helicopter arriving on site.
Yeah. Worst case
One of the
scenario,
other things,
worst case scenario, if you get sucked into the engine.
Exactly. And the other thing is, too, is marking the heliports. And I know that Mark does a really good job of ahead of time marking where he wants the helicopter on site, which gives the pilot a little more comfort when they come in that they are in the right spot. It'll save you time down the road if you don't end up on the right landing. And the other thing, too, is Mark has pointed this out in the past, that almost always after the helicopter is on the ground and before they leave, the truck drivers will mark the spot where the helicopter was sitting so that they have a safe spot to shoot for, so that they know they're clear of everything. Other markings and potential for unique markings and everything, anything that's going to move with rotor wash, you definitely don't want on a heliport. You want something that's secured to the ground or heavy enough it's not going to move.
So it's important that in the days before that we've got the images to the helicopter pilot. We need to make sure that they have the images and they can read them. And we also have to be ready for the old-fashioned paper backup, because sometimes the electronics don't work. So we have to be ready for old school.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. And sometimes these maps, and there have been times where the sat lock doesn't work. You're not able to get the GPS up on screen for the pilots, but these maps are very helpful in being able to review them without having to utilize the GPS system for looking at them. One of the other things that we especially do is that we talk about the plans for the day, and that what we are doing is has been what has been agreed upon, what we're going to do for the day, materials we're going to be using in the batches, units that we're going to be flying, so that you have a good plan in place to follow each day. Yeah, the critical thing on this final staging and everything is that it's very interesting that, you know, sometimes things change. You've got to be able to make those changes as the day comes along, so you've got your materials in the right place, or if there is a change, that you have access to different materials for different units, and that everything is in place. The other thing that is critical is droplet size, that we're, with these products that we're using, and for controlling drift. And this is just a depiction of, there's an app available that will allow you to simulate what droplet size you're going to be producing with nozzle sizes and pressures. And so the larger droplets and not creating any fine droplets for this. And I was, I guess, pretty impressed that Mark brought this up. I didn't know that he was this high tech in running his operations, that he's using phone apps to determine droplet size.
Hey, Jim, can you hear me?
Hey, we got you.
Gotcha. Hey, real quick on that, every label too, Jim, if I could add on, has a volume mean diameter requirement, or most labels do that we use. And so not only the forester, but the pilot needs to be aware of that. And actually, it was Rick Crone at Western Helicopter that showed me that app. And some of them, there's actually engineering standard on the volume mean diameter that specifies coarse, very coarse, or whatever. And got to make sure the pilots understand the herbicides they are using. If they're mixing 2 or 3 together, you have to use the one that's the most restrictive. And just a quick comment on that. Thanks, Jim.
Welcome back, Mark. Also, a note for the audience, in the resource guide, there's a link to this app for those of you that are interested in it. So how about the weather? Tell us about.
Yeah, one of the things that we do, and I'm constantly looking at the weather to determine what the day is going to bring, what the next few days are, and planning. But some of these apps that are available to us, and websites that are available where we can do spot forecasts and detailed daily forecasts, as well as You can change this to a graph form that allows you to look at it on the perspective on what's coming, and especially if you're trying to anticipate the weather that's coming later in the day, whether you have a timing issue for rain coming, or just so you can anticipate when the winds may increase on site. This gives you quite a bit of information. And I know Mark has used some real good applications to
Unmuted.
his projects also.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. One of the things that we do is subscribe to, well, there's a lot of them in the country, but we subscribe to Phil Volker in Portland. And a lot of times with where the radars are set up in the Coast Range, you can get that shadow effect, and the Doppler radar is actually lying to you. So I actually call Phil, and he has a monthly fee, but during the spray project, I'll be visiting with him 2 or 3 times a day to interpret the Doppler radar to let me know how many hours I'll have before a shower comes through, or if it's a go or no-go. So his monthly fee, I've saved it many a times with some of these weather-sensitive, rain-sensitive herbicides that we use. Money well, for us anyway, money well spent.
Yeah, and it's good if you can get radar. I know the South Coast area has a real shadow simply because the radar is Mount Ashland or Portland, and there's quite a bit of lower level information that doesn't show up on radar, but sometimes these weather services can give you just a little bit better indication of what's coming from their experience. That's great, Mark.
Good. So now we'll go to questions from the audience, and so far we have a couple of comments, and one is a comment that the video with the helicopter, one people that were watching it didn't hear any sound. So Andy, I don't know if it's possible to cue that up and run it again so people can hear it, people that may not have heard the tail rotor noise. So if you can't do it, tell me. I'm taking that as a he can't do it. So another comment is we mentioned having the stewardship foresters out, and the comment was that the Department of Ag is also a good resource. Definitely true, and in some situations also may want to involve ODF and W for some species. But it's mostly in the situations where you have a neighbor that you really want an unbiased third party there, and any of those three, ODA, ODF, or ODF and W can be that person for you.
Hey Mike, we've got that
video?
rotor if you wanted. Should we play that?
Please run it with sound this time. I used to watch MASH a lot on TV, so I could fake what it sounds like, but you probably wouldn't enjoy that. So we'll have it up eventually. So I think this is a good point to go forward, do a little time check. Our next thing is ODARC 30, and we're looking good. So Jim, the day of the event, what do you do?
Well, obviously the first thing you need to do, and probably the night before, is make sure that you've allowed yourself enough time to get to your site, so you're going to be there and be prepared at earliest light for flying. Another thing is a lot of us will notify company folks that are and advising offices, crews of our daily plans. When the batch truck is leaving for the site, if it's not already on site, as it is a lot of times, remember your truck's going to take longer to travel to the site, and you're definitely going to be able to plan for the truck to be on the safest road. It's always good for the foresters to lead the truck, keep them in sight, keep good communications. A missed turn is going to cost you time down the road, and just make sure that your roads are safe enough for travel for the large trucks. Sometimes we get driving our pickups and forget the truck takes a little bit more time, as well as a little better road than what we're used to driving on.
Jim,
as we
Jim,
get to go ahead, Mark.
I'm sorry, Jim. If I may add, too, you know, a lot of the logging roads, in fact, most of them are meant for logging trucks going downhill, and you have a batch truck, that has got 3,000 or so gallons of water. He's headed uphill. The road systems are super different, so you got to really pre-drive those roads to make sure a batch truck driver can make it up those things.
Yeah, and communicating those steep pitches and different turns and stuff is critical too, and so that's the excellent reason to keep communications to your drivers as you're moving along. As we get on into the day, we'll plan for our batching. As we get to the site, our final batching. This video here will show you some batching and what takes place on some of the operations as to how the batching is done. Some operations will mix tank loads in 100-gallon, 500 to 1,000, but also some of the mixing is done in individual batches per load for the helicopter, and you saw the formulation there. The truck drivers, mixers will, a lot of times a Sharpie is a great tool for keeping track of what's left, marking on your containers like this so you can see easy markings for your material, and easy to see, and for each individual batch. You see as he's doing this, then he's going to rinse to have that water right available to rinse all the material out of that measuring cup so he gets all the material into the batch.
Excellent. To me, that system where the squirt thing comes up is very, very innovative. It's good to see that. Questions now on ODARC 30. Had a couple questions come in, or comments more is what we're getting. So some people said they couldn't hear the rotor sound, others said they could. There was a question about how far away the helicopter was from the camera, and Bruce Albert was on the site, and he said it was about 1/3 of a mile. So other questions, keep them coming in. And we will move on.